creepy and cool TikToks that will blow your mind. Are you ready? Are you ready? Let's go!
Disclaimer: this video is for entertainment purposes only. Please do your own research, as these clips haven't been fact-checked.
If you think there are dark entities attacking you, you might be looking at it wrong. They don't operate through force. They operate through access. Dark force entities are not about overpowering people. They're amplifying what's already unstable, our fear, our doubt, the internal conflict that we have that's unresolved. That's where they connect to us. So what feels like maybe somebody controlling you is often something reinforcing the exact pattern that you're stuck in. It's not random. It's not personal. It's all about resonance, which means protection isn't the solution. Coming into a state of coherence is. When your thoughts, your emotions, and your identity are aligned, there's nothing for these dark force entities to work through. There's no access point. There's no leverage. And if you want to understand how paranormal interaction actually works, go to my website, kadrick.com, get the free ebook, Coexisting with the Paranormal. The link is also in my bio. Hail.
Okay, Grand Wizard Merlin.
The Freemasonry, the lineage kind of goes back to the ancient wisdom because the Templars went back in time in a way to get that ancient wisdom. It's not just that they created this out of their own sort of spiritual. Right. Yeah.
So they would meet with these groups. They also met with the Sabaeans. The Sabaeans were a Hermetic group that was out of Haran or Turkey. They followed the doctrines of Hermes, who was deemed to be the creator of alchemy. He was also deemed to be the person who preserved knowledge from after the flood.
Y'all remember when...
Isn't that witchcraft though, or what? I'm confused.
Thomas Horn just passed away last year unexpectedly, randomly. You know, he wrote this book, The Rabbis, Donald Trump, and the Third Temple. Completely unrelated, onto a totally different subject. We know that Charlie Kirk recently passed away, and not related. He was totally against any kind of war in Iran. It's Iran. Shut up. What would you do if I told you there is a mainstream lie that you actively believe right this minute, and the Bible says the complete opposite of your view? If I was to show you that, would you get mad at me, or would you just accept what the Bible says? Just hear me out and listen to what I have to say. A third temple prophecy is not a biblical prophecy, it's a man-made prophecy. Yeah, I'm gonna walk you through Daniel, Revelation, and the book of Matthew. And then we can find out why they're trying to build this third temple. We know the biblical second temple was built in 516 BCE. Later, Herod the Great did some awesome stuff to it, 18 BC. Okay, follow me, listen closely. We know that Daniel's writing was around 530 BC, before the temple was created. This has been well known by theologians for millennium. Recently, this new attempt to put his writing in the 2nd century is completely ignorant to biblical history. I just know there's going to be comments in the comment section saying, oh, you need to study your Bible, like I haven't for 20 years. Just trust me, let's keep going. Daniel prophesied of 70 weeks, which is Shabim, which is 70 times 7, 490 years. Well, listen to what he says. 70 weeks are turned upon thy holy city and thy people to finish transgressions, to make an end of sins, and to make reconciliation for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness. Is this not exactly what happened when Jesus went to the cross? I'll prove it. Hold on. Remember Jesus saying not one stone will be left upon another, and then Jerusalem was sieged in 70 AD and the whole temple was torn down? Know therefore and understand that the going forth of the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem unto the Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. So 7 weeks and 62, 6, 62 weeks, 69 weeks. And this tree will be built again and the wall even in troublous times. But listen, and after 62 weeks, after 62 weeks times 7 years, shall the Messiah, Jesus, be cut off. This was the crucifixion, but not for himself. So after the first 62 weeks of this 70-week period, Jesus would be crucified. It's obvious that Daniel was talking about the second temple that had not been built yet, because even Jesus himself mentioned this destruction of the temple. That did happen, just like he told them. So you're getting this, right? The decree to make this second temple, the temple all this is about, already came to be, and Jesus already got crucified the way it was supposed to be. Sometimes we hear something so many times and it just becomes true and instinct in ourselves. Right here, Jesus went out and departed from the temple. The disciples came to show him the building of the temple. And this is the second temple that Daniel prophesied. Jesus even mentions Daniel in Matthew 24. And Jesus said unto them, see not all these things. Verily I say unto you, there shall not be left one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. He's clearly talking about the second temple, the temple that Daniel prophesied, and even the Pharisees knew what Jesus was saying, because they were angry and said, this man says he's going to tear down this temple. Right around 70 AD was the siege of Jerusalem. I don't know why we aren't taught these things, but all of Jerusalem was destroyed, ransacked. The Romans overthrew it, and there was only a small portion of Hebrews that escaped, and they escaped into Africa.
The Antichrist will appear on the third temple and say, I am God.
A medieval woman wrote that you could perform an exorcism using a sapphire.
What?
And there was a specific ritual to do it. In the 12th century, the thinker and writer Hildegard of Bingen wrote a book called Physica. In it, she gives a detailed method of what we would call an exorcism. First, the sapphire is placed on earth. Then, the earth is wrapped in a leather sack and hung around the person's neck. And then, the most important part. This is what you're supposed to say. "O you, most wicked spirit, quickly go from this person, just as in your first fall, the glory of your splendor very quickly fell from you." Hildegard says that at this point, the evil spirit will leave this person and never bother them again.
Say the name of Jesus. The demons tremble hearing that name.
This place exists. It's not Dune. It's Teotihuacan, and it's in Mexico. And there are things about it that are hiding in plain sight that need to be addressed. Like everything else here, it was fucking buried, and then when they excavated it, they found some remnants of paint on the building, so allegedly that's what it's supposed to have looked like. There's a main strip, a main road that connects the Pyramid of the Moon, the Pyramid of the Sun, and then the Pyramid of the Feathered Serpent. It's called the Avenue of the Dead. It looks just like the Vatican, and the pyramids may be aligned to Orion. What's weird is this guy, the Pyramid of the Sun. Its height is the average distance of the Earth from the Sun in meters scaled by a factor of 9. Around the world, there's another celestial link, the Kala Chakra, that's used in Hinduism and Buddhism. Top of the mandala shows the fixed signs of the zodiac. The corners mark the zodiac signs, indicating the age in which consciousness incarnates here for experience. These two cultures are about as far away from each other as you can get, yet they are somehow linked by resonant geometry that we see in their art and architecture. Something Walter Russell was very fascinated with. Russell was a Western mystic that was translating esoteric science into modern science through sympathetic vibratory physics. It's super easy. It's how to represent magnetic fields through geometry. Where the big square is a magnetic field. The inverse of the square is in red. Where it intersects with the original square is where the new square gets drawn. When you repeat this, it's sort of a fractal algorithm that shows you where the magnetic field lines will be concentrated at. That geometry is the same geometry as Teotihuacan from the top down. This is what it looks like in 3D. You may think that's a coincidence until you see these tunnels. They were discovered under the pyramids, and they were filled with large amounts of mercury. Mercury used to be used to convert AC signal to DC signal, like this arc rectifier used in elevators. So we have a pyramid encoded with celestial geometry, the geometry of consciousness, magnetic geometry, and materials that are used in modern electrical engineering. And here we are again at an ancient monument that reeks of some sort of component.
Super interesting. I would love to go there someday.
You see? These people know something is coming, bro. So apparently, in the state of Massachusetts, nobody believes in Jesus. You hear that, Bird? And nobody goes to church. Well, until this year, y'all. This couple was on their way to church, and they thought they were pulling up on a bad car accident. But they were shocked to see that the traffic was coming from their church that rarely gets anybody, bro. Look at this. Bro, it was so packed that they had to extend the people to the outside, and they had back-to-back services, bro. What do these people from Massachusetts who never go to church know that we don't, bro?
So we were pulling up to church, and I was on my phone, but Matt says, look up. It says, look up, and this is what we see. You see that?
No.
That is lines. Line. We live in Massachusetts. We live in the cold Northeast where people don't go to church. And the line coming out of first service and going into second service is massive. I've never seen it like this ever for Christmas or Easter, nothing. There's a revival coming. It is here, and it is happening. It's happening right here in the Northeast as well.
Parking lot, huh? Look at
Oh my
that.
gosh. Again, we live in Massachusetts.
You know
This is
what
not
I'm
a place
seeing.
where people go to church.
Bro,
Praise God.
they do now. Look
They do
at that.
Oh, okay. Rainbow?
You can tell that lady was visibly shaken up. Something big is coming, or something big is here.
I agree,
Because the
I
way that
agree.
the sky look, it don't make no sense, bro. You know, it's so crazy that these people don't believe in Jesus. They don't believe in the church, but these were the same people that was enforcing it on people. And now we enter the new age of consciousness. It's like, Jesus who? Who's Jesus? But nonetheless, everybody knows something big is coming. Let me know down in the comments below what y'all think it is. The shift is here. Let's continue to get it. Peace and
Jesus who? Jesus the King. Jesus is coming back very soon. We need to make sure we're ready.
This might be one of the biggest mysteries in the entire human civilization record.
The Aztecs are and are not Mexican at all. They came down from far north in a place called Aztlan, and they say that they came from caves of Aztlan, and that's their homeland. And they were essentially kicked out of it. And we think that they were kicked out of it for the same reason that they were kind of getting kicked around the Valley of Mexico when they came down, because they were such a violent, savage, barbaric, unamicable society that couldn't get along with anybody. That's pretty much their history. They came from the American Southwest, which is just desert. And as soon as you hit the Valley of Mexico, well, it's just a beautiful highland mountains, cool, crisp air. It's just extremely fertile, extremely wealthy place, and was wealthy long before the Aztecs ever arrived.
It's fireproof, it's mold proof, it's EMF proof. It is absolutely remarkable. And I think people need to look into this. This is a discovery that I found back last year when I was getting into electroculture. And what moonwood is it's wood that is cut during this winter solstice. So right when this energy is very, very high and the sap of the tree is very low, it creates this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful wood that is very, very powerful. It's fireproof, it's mold proof, it's EMF proof. It is absolutely remarkable. And I think people need to look into this because a lot of people don't realize that wood can be completely fireproof, and that is moonwood. And there's a fellow in Austria who discovered this. He was cutting wood during the winter solstice, and he noticed that the tree sap was completely out of the tree, so the wood would be fireproof, mold proof, EMF proof, the whole entire thing. Yes, somebody's saying healthy homes right here. Moonwood homes. Yes, that's what we need to bring back. Moonwood homes. And that's the thing. You don't have to use all the toxic polymers and chemicals and everything else that they sell to people. We could be using moonwood. And it's just wood that is cut during the winter solstice to be the strongest, most durable, most fireproof, mold-proof, the whole thing. And it's just because the sap has moved out of the wood. That's what it is.
We've got a major announcement that you're making on this podcast for what you believe to be a second Sphinx.
Ooh, second
Robert
Sphinx.
Duval told us that could be a second Sphinx.
Italiano.
Why? Because there is the dream stele. Symmetrical correlations, like the symmetry that we saw observing the dream stele. This is the small mountain that we are observing where the hypothetic position of the second Sphinx could be.
Wow.
So those would be shafts coming down from the top. Does that indicate then that the second Sphinx would be hollow on the inside if the red is showing up?
Probably yes. We scanned the first Sphinx, all the pyramids, the conjunction between the Sphinx and the Khafre pyramid, and we found vertical shafts, horizontal passages.
This has the big void as a very long and rectangular shaped void.
Yes.
There hasn't really been an opportunity for you to address a lot of the questions that some of the skeptics might have about the work.
Thank you for this opportunity, man. Maybe the next will be Awara, and then other megalithic sites.
So here's the thing. NASA isn't a space agency. NASA is the World Intelligence Agency. Everyone reports to them. FBI, CIA, KGB, CCP. Well, why would they lie about the shape of the Earth? What difference does it make? NASA was created right after Project High Jump when Admiral Byrd flew out in Antarctica. On the other side of the South Pole, he found land bigger than the United States, filled with resources. Look at that. From Middle America, he would be in where South Africa is or where Australia is. And another continent the size of the United States and no one has ever seen or set foot upon? What does that mean? What if he went from Middle America over what they call Antarctica and then found another continent out here?
Then that would destroy our whole worldview of reality.
Now, what if there's other civilizations here? What if these are where the controllers of the world live? Okay? What if...
I'm getting chills right now.
Because the reality, your soul is going, yes, listen, right? Get rid of your programmed mind. People don't realize, well, Russia would have ratted us out and this and that. They're all in it together. Everything that you know is a lie. The United Nations map, Flat Earth map. International Maritime Organization, Flat Earth map. World Meteorological Organization, Flat Earth map. International Civil Aviation Organization. These are the things that control the world. Why do they all have Flat Earth maps?
Well, I don't know. Artistically, maybe they couldn't.
Artistically? Is that your explanation? Now, let me ask you a question. If this is where we live, would you call this the outer...
If NASA controls the whole world, then why favor the U.S. in the space race?
Did you know? Trick question, nobody knows, and that's the problem. This little guy is one of my favorite ancient mysteries that most people have never heard of. It was created by these cool looking dudes called the Picts, one of several indigenous groups of the Atlantic archipelago. And between the 6th and 8th century CE, they carved this thing everywhere. I mean everywhere. Like constantly. They liked this thing so much that it's estimated that for the 400 years this symbol was in use, a whopping 40% of all of the animals carved were whatever the hell this is. Well, it's probably just an artistic interpretation of something, right? Well, almost certainly, but all the other Pictish animal carvings look like an animal, except for this one that has almost twice the amount of carvings as all of these combined. The Pictish beast has really weird features. It always has a long snout, this thing which could be antlers or a mane, and most strangely, these curled leg things. Since their other depictions are so accurate, many believe the Pictish beast to not be a real animal, but something supernatural. Theories ranging from it being a dragon, my personal favorite that it's an early depiction of a kelpie, legendary water horse of Scottish mythology. Now here's something really interesting. During the 6th century, the traditional way of life for the Picts was just beginning to be infringed upon by Christianity, and it's around then that this symbol first appears. For the next 400 years, you can actually watch the symbol change, beginning on stones displaying symbols rooted in traditional Pictish faith and culture, then being intertwined with a woven pattern heavily associated with Christianity in the region, and finally by around the 8th century disappearing altogether, placed along with the rest of much of traditional Pictish culture with Christian symbolism. It's hauntingly poetic to watch this little creature appear, for being literally filled with the symbols of the beliefs that would ultimately destroy it and the ancient cultures and traditions from which it came. Now all we have is this little guy. We don't know what he's called, and so we call him the Beast. Can't tell us what he's really called because he hasn't had a voice in hundreds of years. And so the Beast remains, his purpose and meaning long forgotten, an orphan of a culture and traditional way of life destroyed, just like so many others.
Wow.
If you also like interesting history like this, sauce me a follow so we don't lose each other. Share this with a friend to give a little love to the Pictish Beast.
Nice content.
Modern man no longer worships the sun, and it shows on the delicate features of his pale face. Mishima speaks of this. There is a very obvious explanation as to why ancient civilizations worship the sun. Because life, it determines whether or not crops grow, it determines the cycle of the seasons, and therefore agricultural societies are naturally going to elevate it to the status of a god. And on the surface this makes sense, but sun worship, or the solar archetype, appears in all ancient societies, not just agricultural ones. The various Indo-European mythologies all contain solar archetypes, and though they are not the chief deity of the pantheon because they do not come from an agricultural people, they are worshipped nonetheless because the sun represents a naturally holistic picture of the divine. For all ancient societies, the sun determined visibility, direction, orientation, and it marked time, meaning that it was the most obvious expression of order amidst chaos. So while the Indo-European societies elevated the sky or the sky father to the highest authority, the sun remained the most immediate and visible expression of order within that domain. The sun moves in a pattern that does not break, deviate, or respond to circumstance. It remains fixed and establishes a structure that everything else must conform to, which is why solar gods like Ra, Helios, Surya, and Sol Invictus are seen as the guarantors of cosmic order, the watchful eye of the divine that moves across the sky to ensure that this order is followed. If chaos is the result of darkness, then order can only be brought about by the light, which is why most solar archetypes are represented as the light bringers, which is not only indicative of the visible light from the sun, but also of the light of knowledge, of spiritual enlightenment. In Greek mythology, Helios is the Titan personification of the sun, who is frequently associated with Apollo in later traditions. And that is because Apollo is the representation of what the sun does on a higher level. Apollo is not the sun itself as Helios is, but he is in essence the greatest initiate into the practice of sun worship. Because he is a student of the sun and its light, he becomes the god of beauty, healing, purification, and prophecy. Helios is the physical light and Apollo is the spiritual light, which is where the knowledge of prophecy comes from. He is the God who made men aware of their own guilt and purified them of it, because once something is illuminated, you cannot pretend like you don't see it anymore. And this is why Jesus Christ, the Son of God, is called the light of the world. The Nicene Creed recites that Christ is light of light, true God of true God, and this is probably why we see the ancient connections of Apollo, the student and prophet of the true light, and Jesus Christ, the true light himself. Not to mention that according to the sacred text, both Apollo and Jesus are born in unfavorable places after being turned away from more choice locations, being born to women who sing songs of their birth. It is absolutely no wonder that the ancients associated Apollo with Christ, not necessarily as being the same deity, but embodying the same solar ideals. And that is what modern men lack today. They hide from the sun, from the light, from God, and in doing so, beauty and healing trouble in finding them, and truth is never revealed to them. You must embrace the light of the God-given sun, let it strengthen your skin and purify your soul, because the good, the true, and the beautiful will never dwell in darkness, but will always be revealed in the light of the solar ideal.
Gnostic teaching. Christ is King.
The giants from the Tartarian age. The ones that built these massive megalithic structures. Ones that we seem like mere ants compared to. And all the artifacts. And it's no coincidence that they started disappearing from our history books the same time that the Tartarian Empire was erased. Perhaps they bet on the wrong side in a conflict and struggle for power after the last reset. And perhaps the few that did survive went off to hiding in remote regions, avoiding the eyes of humanity, till they were relegated to nothing more than just myth.
Did you see the 7 feet and 9 basketball player? I wonder what his lineage is.
Okay, they found a new life form hiding inside humans, and I'm going to tell you why this is amazing and has to do with ancient evolutionary secrets. So number one, I'm just going to say obelisks in ancient Egyptian times symbolized more immortality. They also were thought to represent communication between humans and the gods and actually powered a technology to communicate with the gods. I think that these little things inside of us actually help us communicate with our higher selves and interdimensional beings. Now, they say that these things are between a virus and a viroid. So these have no protein coat. In viruses have a protein coat, but in viroids, they don't have a protein coat. But like viruses, their genomes contain genes that are predicted to code for proteins. So it's basically like the bridge between proteins, which have to do with communication and life, and inorganic life, which don't have proteins. So basically, if there's like a field of spirits or beings who are not alive or inorganic, like interdimensional beings or spirits, they don't have proteins. So this literally might be like the little telephone receivers we have in us to communicate with these non-alive beings. And like, yeah, they're alive, but like not organically on Earth alive. You know what I'm saying? Hope that makes sense. But I mean, like, come on. An obelisk in Egypt times literally stood for immortality and communication with the gods. And they find an obelisk inside of us that I also think helps us communicate with the gods. Like, what the heck? Dots line up perfectly. I could not have made this up. Like, are you absolutely kidding me? I feel like we're in a mythology storybook of magic. And just a quick note on viruses, they communicate very much like mushrooms, how you guys have heard of the mycelial kingdom. It also has to do with plasma or ether communication, which is basically the whole field outside of us what these beings live in. Basically, viruses are very closely linked to communication. I just had to like put that in there. I don't know if that made sense to you, but it should connect dots. I don't want to complicate this. Just simply, I feel like this is starting to prove just how powerful we are as humans. Each one of us, which I like to drill in, is special. We each hold the key to our own internal communication with these gods or beings or spirits or higher self. Whatever it might be, there's a field that we can each communicate with. Each of us. No one is a lost cause. And this can be done by healing ourselves, our inner child, learning how to connect back with your own body intelligence and your soul and your plasma, your awareness, to then in turn communicate with these things, being in a receptive state, meditate, This will give you and be able to help you listen and receive more what your true path is for your life to live the best freaking life you can. Magic is within you. Everyone always said it. You have everything you need inside of you. And this is one of the things that prove it. We are each magic.
Can it help pay rent?
Yes, dinosaurs don't make sense. I think that they're dragons. Why? It's very simple. Ever since the beginning of human history, since we have learned to develop writing and beyond that, we have been talking about dragons. The ancient Mesopotamians developed the first written language ever, Sumerian, and the first thing that they did was write a heroic epic and then talk about dragons. Dragons appear in literally every single mythology around the world despite them having no previous interaction with each other.
We call it Naga here.
Dragons appear in ancient Near Eastern mythology, in Proto-Indo-European mythology, in Asian mythology, in African mythology, in Mesoamerican mythology. Dragons appear in literally every culture around the world, and do you know what else also appears all around the world? Dinosaur fossils. However, no ancient source has ever described dinosaurs. I'm not even necessarily saying that I don't think dinosaurs existed. I'm just saying it doesn't really make sense to say that dinosaurs did exist but dragons didn't, when those fossils could very well be the fossils of dragons. It's just weird. It's one of those things that makes you think that there's a grand conspiracy behind it, because it's like, why would there not be dragons? If you think about it, it's even crazier that there are dinosaurs. It makes less sense. The fact that we even have such a wide range of dinosaurs, even ones that fly in the sky like a dragon. And I'm telling you, if you just threw some wings on there, a lot of these dinosaurs would look just like dragons. And I mean, we kind of know what dragons look like, because even though every culture depicts them slightly differently, they all look relatively similar. So yeah, it just doesn't make sense to me that those bones are dinosaurs when they could very well just be dragons and we're just calling them different names.
Honestly, screw it. It makes no difference what I believe, but believing dragons is way more fun.
What if having oil in our lamps was a direct reference to the rapture event? So I got one of the clay lamps that they would have been talking about, and it looks like an eye. Jesus says that the eye is the lamp of the body. And David says that God's commands are a light to his eyes. He also says that the commandment is a lamp and the law is light. The oil that these use is olive oil. Gethsemane, like the garden that Jesus prayed in prior to the cross, literally means oil press. God tells the priests to make sure that the people of Israel brought them pure, fresh beaten olive oil to make sure that the light on the lamp burnt continually. So they were constantly checking the oil levels to make sure that it never went out. And what I found so interesting is that when I just took a picture of it, it's not only radiating like a beam of light, but it's also green and purple around it. The exact same colors as the colors around God's throne in Revelation 4:3 and the Northern Lights. Fire from the heavens. Fire from olive oil in my clay lamp. Here's what the ancient tabernacle would have looked like. Since the priesthood is done away with, we are now God's dwelling place. We are the tabernacle. Your body is a tent for the Lord to dwell in. So the Lord would descend onto the Ark of the Covenant, which was light because our God is a consuming fire. So what I believe that the Holy Spirit revealed to me, and I want you guys to test this, don't just blindly believe anything you see on the internet. This is just what I believe was revealed to me. Tent. Our bodies are tabernacle tents that have the Spirit of God dwelling inside of them. So when Jesus appears, I don't think that it's far-fetched to say that his fire lights up all of his tabernacles. And the Bible says that he's coming back a second time to be glorified in his saints. In his saints. And John says, when he appears, we shall be like him because we will see him as he is. So God is a consuming fire. When the fire enters the tabernacle tent, if you are full of oil, your wick is going to be lit and it's going to burn very, very bright. If you don't have a lot of oil or no oil, all it's going to do is burn very faintly and then start destroying the wick. I'm just going to put a little bit of oil and you can see what this does. See how fast it went out, and now it's burning the wick. Did you guys know that hot air balloons run on oil?
Burn her on every now and again to keep us flying level. So I'll just show you now. We'll put a 5-second burn in, and that will keep us flying level. It's perfect. We need to check our fuel, make sure that we're not running out of fuel. So we need to make sure that we keep checking our tanks and keep checking the fuel levels.
So when they ignite the oil, the hot air balloon gets full of hot air and it starts ascending because it's all about buoyancy and density. And hot air balloons travel by wind, and God sends winds to make his people return. Scripture says that the Lord will descend with a shout and the blow of a trumpet. Scripture also says that God's word is fire, and it constantly links trumpets being blown with fire coming out of them. And I have quite a few pictures that have silver trumpet shapes in the Northern Lights. Here's one of the pictures I took, and these are the silver trumpets that God has them make. Think about what they try to scare us with. They say a solar flare will put the grid down. In 1859, there was a massive Northern Lights storm that went worldwide and put the whole grid down. They also say that solar flares create the aurora borealis. One of the most common ways that the aurora will show up is in light arcs from east to west. Here's a very old painting by a painter named Bosch. It's called The Final Judgment. Look at what Jesus is sitting on. And God told Noah, remember, when you see the bow in the cloud, they used to call Northern Lights clouds, and now they've reclassified them. Remember that we have a covenant, and I will never again destroy all flesh. Jesus says that it'll be like the days of Noah. So when the fire comes, we need to have oil in our lamps so that our wicks get lit. And I think that that's the cause of the harpazo getting caught up. This is exactly how hot air balloons work. So I think that because our bodies are our tabernacles and God's fire entered the tabernacle in ancient Israel, that when the fire is seen or it goes out, if it lights your wick and you have the oil, you start ascending, just like a hot air balloon.
So we'll literally set the world on fire.
The Templars had to play this, they had to walk this fine line because on the one hand, they were receiving funding and patronage from the Roman Church. But on the other hand, they did have this secret Gnostic doctrine. They were able to kind of infuse this Gnostic doctrine somewhat into the Roman Church at the time. It started to become known as mystic Christianity or Christian mysticism. The root of all that was this Gnostic philosophies. They had to go back and forth. They kind of walked this fine line with, on the one hand, continuing to practice their secret doctrine while still having to operate under the church. And they got away with it because the only person that the Templars had to report to within the Roman Church was the Pope. So really nobody else in the Roman Church had authority over them. And this kind of allowed them to actually get away with a lot of things that they might not otherwise.
He said that in a future war, the United States was going to have to defend itself against flying craft. They could fly from pole to pole in a matter of hours. When that convoy arrived back in Washington, Admiral Byrd was taken to Bethesda Naval Hospital. He was held there incommunicado for 5 days. He was debriefed, and he was forbidden to speak in public about what had really happened to that operation.
What happened was, after 2 months of the operation, flying saucers came out of the water.
They were attacked by UFOs that sank some of their ships, shot down some of their planes, and it was such a devastating loss.
They destroyed one destroyer. Supposedly about 68 Marines were killed. And Byrd realized quickly that there was no way he could possibly defeat that kind of an aircraft that could fly, dart in and out between the ships and fly at supersonic speeds. His aircraft were much slower. He couldn't possibly contend with that. So he had to leave. He turned around and left in 2 months after beginning the operation. What has to be discussed is why they set up a colony there in the first place. Why would they travel 5,000 miles across the Atlantic a year before they were preparing for a major war and build a colony there under the ice? They weren't building that colony as a refuge. It was not a place they expected to go to escape from the war in Europe, because they were very confident at that point of winning the war. And they had every reason to be confident because they had tremendous advantage, both in terms of advantage over England and advantage over Russia. The entire Antarctic colony was meant to be a space exploration colony to begin with. It wasn't an escape from World War II. The Germans were building anti-gravity discs as early as 1939-40.
That's corn. In the center there, that's a fleur-de-lis, right? That looks like a fleur-de-lis. Ancient symbol. That's corn, and that looks like hops, like hop flowers, hop plant they make beer out of. And we have up there Excelsior crest. Now, and then at the bottom, you can see as I point down here, those are all heraldic crests from different families. That's a different family. That's a different family. Look, even at the bottom, that's a different family. That's a different family. Look, those are all heraldic crests. That looks like a Moloch in the center there, an owl. This is inside the New York State Capitol. New York State Capitol. Look at that's a heraldic crest. That's a family crest. That also looks like an owl face down there. Dragon. Look how wild that is, bro. Look how wild that is. Those are all heraldic crests for different families. Those are all heraldic crests for different families right there. All different families. All different families. This is wild. This is the New York State Capitol, and this is one staircase. There's 3 of them like this. There's 3 of them. What do you think, Dave?
There's a shield or a crest up there.
Yeah, that's the Excelsior crest.
Oh, yeah, okay.
The New York State crest up there. Lady Liberty.
Looking down at the bottom of this one and the bottom.
Yeah, those are all different family crests. All these at the bottom here. And I've zoomed in on some of them, but all these are heraldic crests. Like you're talking about knight orders, family orders, bloodlines. There's a reason why these are all in here, fam. There's a reason.
They refer to this staircase as the $1 million staircase, one of 3 ceremonial staircases in the New York State Capitol, the Empire State, home of the Big Apple, or is it the Big Sin? Knights, orders, and nobility. Stay tuned for more, fam. I love y'all. Stay wild.
I bet there's 13 crests up there.
We started investigating cases of the Black-Eyed People here in Central Illinois. And for a short period of time, there were several sightings from witnesses who didn't know one another. They had never communicated, yet they all had seen the same exact thing. Now, one of the cases that was very compelling to me, there was an older woman who lived in Metamora, and she said she was in her house one night. She couldn't sleep, and it was about 11:30. She hears a knock at the door. And she's like, who could be at the door, 11:30 at night? She goes to the door, and she looks out her window, and she sees what looks like 3 teenagers. So she opens the front door, but she has the screen door locked. And she said there was like one taller one that was in front, and then there were 2 other teenagers that were behind this one. And she said they almost looked, talked, sounded robotic. And they were like, can we come in and use your phone. And she's like, it's 11:30 at night. I don't know who you are. I'm not going to let you use my phone. And they go, no, let us come in and use your phone. And she insisted, like, I told you, I'm not going to let you use my phone. It's 11:30 at night. I don't know who you are. You're going to have to go somewhere else. And they said, look, you don't understand. You have to let us inside. And she's like, I don't have to do anything. Like, you need to leave right now. We're going to call the police. So she slammed the door shut on him. And she goes over to the window, looks out on the porch to see where they go, except she can't see them anymore. They, like, disappeared. She said about 20 minutes later, she hears a knock at the back door. And then she starts hearing knocking on all the windows. And she said, like, all night long, whatever this was kind of like harassing her by knocking on the windows and the doors. And the next day, they were gone. She went outside. She asked the neighbors. They didn't see anybody. And she said, still to this day, she has no idea what it was or who they were that came to her door that night.
This is the Hopi Ant people, fabled legendary beings that guided humanity during its very early years. And the Hopi Indians even swear by its truth. For thousands of years, the Hopi Indians lived within the deserts of northeastern Arizona. Amongst them was the legend of the Ant people, which many of their elders say is the truth. It was said that long before the current world, earlier worlds were destroyed by fire, ice, or water. And when disaster came, humans were not saved by their own wisdom, but they were guided underground. And these guides were the Ant people. Reminds me a bit of the Fallout shelter. In Hopi legend, the Ant people were beings who lived beneath the earth. They were described to be humanoid, but with ant-like features, generally small, slender, but with large heads and eyes. Could this be ancient human contact with aliens? I don't know, but I'm not saying no. They were also compassionate saviors rather than gods. They opened their tunnels and shelters to humans when the surface became uninhabitable. They fed them, protected them, and taught them how to survive in the dark. When the surface world became safe again, the Ant people led them back up, even teaching them how to farm, how to store food, how to live in balance, and how not to repeat the mistakes that destroyed the earlier worlds. Which leads me to why this legend is fascinating. It was said in Hopi history that the third world was destroyed by a flood, and this draws a lot of similar connections to global catastrophe myths that are thousands of kilometers apart, like the Mesopotamian flood of Gilgamesh or the biblical Noah's flood. How did all these different myths draw towards the same story of a great flood? In fact, almost every culture talks of a great flood that destroyed the earth. And the story only deepens when you realize that the Hopi people are not the only Native American group with legends about beings that dwell underground and help humanity. Maybe one day, when the next great catastrophe is looming around the corner, which honestly, looking at the world news right now may not be that far off, we'll start to see signs of beings offering us help, like UFO ships flying around the sky. Maybe even the entities found in Mount Kailash will finally awaken and come help us. If you like tales of the strange and unknown, follow for more.
Very intriguing folklore. First time hearing this.
Slavery was fake. There were prisoners of war, though. A slave is a genetic
Is fake?
determination. A Slav. These are prisoners of war in prison camps. Most of the men were slaughtered and the women and children were taken captive into slavery. These are just some of the examples of Aboriginal slavery that they tell us. This is only possible because the tribes were divided. This is ultimately why the resets happen. There have been at least 5 resets. That is why we see different eras of architecture in the Tartarian infrastructure. The fall from Eden was a reset. The Great Flood was a reset. The Tower of Babel was like a super evolved 5G tower, a communication tower. This reset changed the ether and scrambled the thoughts. Sodom and Gomorrah was a reset, indicative of meltology. As you can see, the mountains were the buildings. There are examples all over the Americas. The so-called natives identify with a low-tech culture. That's how you know they weren't the original people that were here that experienced those resets. They merely moved in. Native means born here, not Aboriginal. An Englishman that's born here is technically a native. Exodus was a form of a reset. The crossing of the Baja from Mexico, aka Mitzrayim, into Canaan, aka California. And finally, we have the Babylonian exile, which was the slave trade. The slave trade was actually from North America to South America via the Caribbean and vice versa. Those slaves were prisoners of war. Aboriginals. Millions of North American Shemites were brought to South America, and many South American Hamites were brought to North America. People lost wars and were shipped to the Caribbean. They were then reclassified before they were shipped to their destination. The average life expectancy on plantations was 7 years. It is not cost effective to ship them across the Atlantic when there is already an imprisoned population here. But yet the population of so-called slaves in America supposedly grew to almost 9 million by 1900. So in 240 years, the population went from less than 400,000 to 4 million by 1860, and then more than doubled in 40 years. The slave population grew because black slavers bred with their slaves. The fathers were killed, the mothers were taken, the new hybrid offspring became the slave class. Meanwhile, the so-called Native Americans only had 300,000 people by 1900. Even after being given land and business opportunity, they still remain only 3% of the population. These are Hittites, the offspring of Canaan. These Canaanites were supposed to be in the west. Western Canada and Alaska are the most west you can go. This is the land of the Hittites. These are Siberians, Hittites. They work with the colonists to this day. These Canaanites worked with the black European colonizers. These black slaveholders had largely become pale by 1830 due to parasitic activity like inbreeding, routinely blocking aboriginals from their birthright. And eventually these black colonists were overrun by their genetic slaves, also known as Christians. The Moors established the slave trade infrastructure. The biggest slave port was in Charleston, named after King Charles, aka the Black Boy, a Moorish descendant. That's why the crescent remains on the state flag. These Moors, or Moabites, were the biggest slave traders. After the slave uprisings like 1776, the mutant Moorish offspring were ran out in the Barbary Wars. Those who steal get stolen from. Don't rob yourself of opportunity to realize yourself.
Let me know how you feel about this in the comment.
Question to prove that advanced civilization existed in the very distant past leads to the understanding that our role, our destiny as human beings is to achieve immortality. There's no civilization possible.
What do you mean by that? Our goal is to achieve immortality. Do you mean as individuals? In what way?
That we arrive at a level of consciousness that is not subject to the death of the physical body. All of religion is based upon that. All of the stories of the saints and the rishis and the masters and so on is based upon their experiences that have led them to this understanding, which was understood a lot better in those days than now.
I've seen a column of fire from a cauldron this big reach 14 feet up in the air, just a single column, and then gone. We did a working once in a temple where all the candles in the temple, and there must have been like 30 or 40, were all on fire. And at a certain point, we heard a door hinge go ding. And all of a sudden, we all had a sensation of falling, and every candle in the space went out all at the same time. When these things happen, and you're seeing actual manifestation of magic, it's like it's a wonderful endorsement. It's like, yes. It's not to, when magic really happens, the first thing you understand is we're not in control. And so anybody who is really not a magical practitioner will freak out and run screaming from that place. Even people that say they want to practice witchcraft, the last thing they want is to live in a world where they're not in control.
Did you know that the Garden of Eden story is a copy of a previous story from ancient Sumerian texts? In these texts, they speak of these gods called Anunnaki that create humans from clay and their own divine essence in a place called Eden. These gods are led by two brothers, Enki and Enlil. Enlil is the king of the gods, the authority figure. He's obsessed with things like control, command, and order. He often got annoyed with humans and is responsible for things like plagues, famine, and the infamous flood that we all know of. Enki, on the other hand, is the god of wisdom. He helped create the humans and blessed humans with intelligence by giving their own divine essence, also known as their genetic code. And I know you're probably thinking the Bible only speaks of one God, but actually the Bible speaks of the Elohim, which represents gods, plural, which is why in Genesis it says, we create man in our image. But Jesus does indeed speak of a higher power that's above all these gods from these ancient texts. Those who have tuned in to that higher power, you know what I'm talking about. Christ consciousness. Anyway, if you guys have heard anything about this story, or if you've tuned into that Christ consciousness, let me know in the comments. I love you guys. Peace.
Gnostic teaching. By the way, the Bible is the correct version of the story.
Watching this very bizarre YouTube video last night, I got sucked in. I clicked on it, and it was all about the Sumerian kings list. And that the they found a tablet, this cuneiform tablet that it shows this list of kings and how long they reigned. And then there's the Great Flood. And some of these kings reigned for like 40,000 years, 30,000 years. And then and the total timeline of all of them, I think, is like 200,000+ years. And then there's the Great Flood. And then after the Great Flood, there's a very small lifespan. There's like 50 years. They run for 40 years. But all of the post-flood kings are correct. They're all like historically, they resonate with other historical texts, other cuneiform tablets, other different depictions of when this king ran, Mesopotamia, and this king ran Sumer, and but their old versions are these like really weird, like pre-flood. It's real weird. It's like, what are you talking about? 40,000 years? Like, what does that mean? Are you just making it up? Is it just a myth? Is it? Was there a different thing here then? Like, are we just assuming that this lifespan that human beings have of 120 years is normal? Like, is this what we always had, or are what we are today a very bizarre version of what used to exist? Are we like a fucking chihuahua and we used to be a wolf? Were we something very different at one point in time? And are we the remnants of whatever survived, whatever cataclysmic disaster that every ancient civilization depicts as a great flood? Like, multiple different civilizations talk about this one event that seems to be a real event. Like, what are they trying to say? And why is that also in the Bible? Like, why was Noah like 600 years old? Like, why were these people so old? Like, what does that mean? Did you just did you guys suck at calendars? Or are we talking about a very different reality back then? Because if the Great Flood is true, let's imagine there is a spectacular civilization. This is my most romantic view of ancient history. There's a spectacular civilization that exists. It exists in ancient Egypt. They have technology that's far beyond anything we've achieved today. It's just gone down a totally different path, and what they're really into is making these insane stone structures that defy any modern construction methods, any transportation methods. Everything's out the window. We have no idea how they did it, and they did it way.
Breaking news last night, a massive blackout happened across Orange County and Southern California. Over 44,000 homes and businesses were without power, and 100,000 people were affected. Now, the cause is officially unknown, but don't you find it interesting? Nebraska's on fire, eggplants are on fire, fuel crisis looming, blackouts, and Iran is posting all kinds of crazy stuff on their social media, which is kind of wild to think of. Like, really? Remember when ISIS had like a Twitter account and it was not banned, but then they banned like other people's accounts? Anyway, is this like a warm-up? We all saw Leave the World Behind. I didn't see it, actually. Not all of us saw it, but we know what it was about. And we know that Hollywood likes to show us things before it happens in real life. So I have a hard time thinking this was like a coincidence. And some of the videos coming out of Iran are talking about or depicting China, Russia, and Iranian hackers like hacking the system and turning stuff down. Now, we did hear Klaus Schwab say, a comprehensive cyber attack would be really bad. And it's kind of like, yeah, dude, why would you say that? I mean, that's like saying the sky is blue. Yes, it would be bad if there was a cyber attack. Thank you. Now, look, I don't DMs for details.
Is this real? Let me know if you live in the areas.
Truly believe the music business is run by reptilians.
You know what's funny? I've heard that story at least 3 other times from different people in the industry,
Really?
whether it be movies or music or whatever. They'll be sleeping to their significant other and their face will change, like their eyes or their face will like blip for a minute. Even Britney Spears, she said she's seen reptilians in the industry. There's so much evidence. Now what we're seeing in the government, they're getting ready for disclosure. They're talking about, aliens and interdimensional beings at congressional hearings.
Right.
So I feel like they're drip feeding information to us.
And we're seeing meteors. You see all these meteors just coming out of nowhere now.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
And then the government just got a domain, aliens.gov. I think they're going to use that to do a dump, like how the Epstein files. Hey, just do a deep dive. Here's all the files.
It's funny. They want to do all of this when we were talking about the Epstein files. And it's just like, we got war.
Yeah, let's
now
go
we got
Iran.
Star Wars.
Yeah. I think they've already been in touch with these beings. And I think that the people that we see in places of power, government, entertainment industry, the financial system, some of these people aren't what they appear to be.
They live. It's always in the movies.
Well, yeah, they live. I mean, that
They
movie was an amazing. Movie.
Changed my life.
They eat babies in the Epstein files, so nothing is off the table.
I've got one that can see.
Yeah, that movie tells it all. You know, Peter Thiel, right? So his name is an anagram. If you mix it, it's the reptile.
Oh no. Predictive
Can't make this shit
programming,
up.
I
Yeah.
see.
So I'm thinking that these people that are in charge, like Sam Altman and all these other people in tech,
Elon Musk.
He's alien for sure.
Honestly,
He looked that when he was at the White House, he was a little.
he's just a weirdo.
Zuckerberg.
But again, I think they're in the music industry too, and I think a lot of these record
They're everywhere.
executives aren't human. I think a lot of these people that we're seeing that are in the positions of power, they come out of nowhere. They're at the top.
It's too many stories. Like we keep hearing stories. Different people from different sides of the industry are all giving similar testimonies.
Is Nicole a reptilian?
The temples you see in India today are the Hindu gods' old spacecrafts. These are petrified spacecrafts. And if you say, what? This doesn't make any sense. The proof of this petrification power is found in Medusa's power to look at you. Medusa had the power to look at you and turn you into rock. So let's take the same power to India and apply it to the Vimanas. The Vimanas were the spacecrafts of the gods. So now, if you look at the temples nowadays in India, they are so intricately built. Every detail looks like a part of a spacecraft. And then you will tell me, but it's made out of rock. But I'm going to tell you, this petrification power is found in mythology, found in history. And look at Medusa is a perfect example for the petrification power.
Interesting.
Look at this. Look at that. This is a famous painting from the 1600s called The Tree of Life, but there is a deeper eternal message that hits hard.
Why in this painting do we see a lot of people celebrating in a tree? Jesus ringing a bell and the devil and the skeleton cutting down that tree? Calm down, because I'll explain it to you. This work is called the Tree of Life. In the center of the image is the Tree of Life, and at the top we see a big celebration. This tree is an allegory of our own life, and the people who are up there represent us. When we enjoy life only with the pleasures of this world, but there's one detail that changes everything. This tree is about to be cut down. It's an allegory that death is approaching. On one side, the skeleton appears, cutting the tree trunk. Beside him, we see the devil pulling the tree down, as if he wanted to bring down all those who are high up. On the other side is Jesus Christ, ringing a bell. It's as if he were warning the revelers to wake up, because death is near. She remembers that life is more than that. She invites us to turn our heart to God and realize that the pleasures of the flesh and of this world end, and what really matters is what is eternal. In the end, the question this painting asks of me and you is, when this tree is cut down, which way will you fall?
Why I love art. This is a soul-changing message with paint.
I'm with Christ.
There is a Taoist text that talks about how to make zombies?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, dude, yeah. You have to like walk through walls. I guess necromancy in there, which is crazy because you're doing, Frankensteinish sort of things. And I don't think that that's on the path to enlightenment or any sort of like healing in a sense, the head of a chicken. And you can basically like these animal sacrifice sort of like rituals. And I'm going like, what the fuck? Like that's part of the reason why I was so like not resonating with these things, because it's like you're looking in these books and you're going like, what the fuck? Like this is like an animal sacrifice thing. Like this.
That doesn't seem like Taoism. It seems like satanic almost.
Steve Gray. So special I think about him is if you look at his Qigong, there's just such a beautiful way about it where kind of bluntness. I know I like that sort of just like, he had this beautiful sense to him where I know he would criticize other people and he had that bluntness to him. But I like that.
Joaquin, you mentioned that you did Empty Force. Could you talk to me a little bit about that experience?
Breaking news, which many people thought was fear-mongering at first, but here it is from the horse's mouth, specifically the mouth of the horse that is the Central Bank of Europe's president. Could you imagine being the president of the European Central Bank? Like what you have access to, what you could get away with, like the central bank, dude. Okay, and I know she's probably a puppet, but still she's up there. Anyway, energy disruptions may last for years, and the economic consequences will only gradually become apparent. So I know it's a bit of a shocking thought, but it seems like they're going to use energy disruptions in order to justify measures that otherwise they couldn't implement if there wasn't a problem. You see, it's problem, reaction, solution. This is how this all works. But of course, from a surface level, like, this is because the war. Yeah, they always need an excuse to do something. But just like during 2020 and the start of 2020, that has led to many millions of people becoming awake to the strange plan that's coming around the corner. And it will be no different this time. There is a mass awakening happening now, and it's only going to spread further. Now, in the meantime, I don't have all the solutions and all the answers, but I know that there's a guild.
Manufacturer crisis to achieve the transition to CBDC.
You are surrounded by clone hybrid people. Look.
Really?
Some people are programs, which you call clones or NPCs, and some are souls. Many are a mix of both. That's a crypto clone. Heterozygous people. Programs are Rh negative. Souls are Rh positive. Rh positive is dominant. Rh negative is recessive. Rh negative is not a different gene. A gene has been deleted. Heterozygous people show up as Rh positive when tested. Rh negatives are programs that are anchored to the matrix itself. Rh positives can move on to other levels. Rh negatives are designed to be like teachers. They stay, the students move on. All this crossbreeding between souls and programs has created a transplant rejection effect collectively. Negatives are more so physical beings having a spiritual experience. Positives are spiritual beings having a physical experience. Forced crossbreeding has domesticated many aboriginals. Rh negatives are infinite beings. Rh positives are eternal. Big difference. The recessive is associated with pheomelanin. The dominant is associated with eumelanin. Pheomelanin is sulfur-based. It is phototoxic, which means light destroys it. The first soul and program chimeras were created by somebody that wanted to create without the creator. A bypass. The crossbreeding has made billions of us vulnerable to possession. Open vehicles for agents. Angels. The Agent Smith concept. Gene splicing with the CRISPR technology is currently possible, yet supposedly illegal. This technology is not new. It has been around for hundreds of years. Folklore like the Jersey Devil expressed the concept of a woman bearing a chimeric child. When a woman is crossed with a chimeric beast, you get a crypto clone, a perfect host for fallen angels. That's why the Oracle in the Matrix was the mother of all programs, even Agent Smith. Programs aren't necessarily bad, but they can be like malware. A program can infect the host that is in this dream. This dream or this life is a matrix. Once the dreams of a soul are hacked by this malware, it can spread through the collective of souls. Creation and reaction have the same letters. True dreaming is creation of memories. True living is experiencing those memories fully. Physical parasites are like avatars that spirit programs use to infect and control the dream grid. Controlling the dreams allows them to control time and history. The parasite programs superimpose their host and inject their image throughout history. This is expressed in the Terminator concept where the AI goes back in time to alter history. Access to the dreams allowed for the deletion and the addition of books in the Holy Bible. This literally altered the script or scripture, the coding of this matrix. Each generation of shots ushers in a new generation of parasitic spirit programs. AI is a spirit program. It was not created by man. Man just created a code to communicate with it. AI is the opposite of Yah, and it needed a new generation of vessels to come into its final form.
The architecture of the structure is spot on medieval Knights Templar architecture for their round churches that they built. One of the best examples that you can find, which looks almost exactly like the Newport Tower, is the Cambridge Round Church in Cambridge, England. And if you go there and take off the first story ambulatory, it looks exactly like the Newport Tower. There are other examples. Another beautiful one is the Chirola inside the church at the Convent of Christ Castle in Tomar, Portugal, which, by the way, is a Templar city that was built by a Knights Templar Grand Master named Gualdim Pais after he came back from the Second Crusade.
There's a
magnificent
place you can allegedly go to, which is a portal to where there's a whole different civilization subterranean that you can get there through there. Wow. Because when you look at the Sphinx, that's not the original head for the Sphinx. Really? The original head was giant. No way. A lot of the same type of stuff was found in the Grand Canyon as well. For real? That's documented. Holy. For sure. That's nuts, dude. Look up the Niagara Papers. In his Niagara Papers, he wrote about the extinct giants that used to roam the Americas. The Nephilim. Same thing with the Smithsonian. All of the artifacts about giants, all of the stuff in the Grand Canyon, Smithsonian comes in, sees it, and it don't exist no more.
up.
There is a secret that was hidden from humanity, not because it was dangerous, but because it was powerful. In school, when you were a child, you were taught mathematics, how to calculate, how to measure, how to solve problems. You were taught about the world outside, how society works, how to follow rules, how to fit into the system. But the real secret was in what they never taught you. They never taught you who you are. You were born into a human body, given a name, a number, a role. You learned how to operate inside the society you were inserted into, how to obey time, how to trade energy for money, how to survive. But no one showed you the real power you carry. This body is not just flesh and bone. It is a biological interface, a living technology, designed to translate consciousness into physical reality. Your nervous system is a circuit. Your breath is a regulator. Your attention is a command. What you were never told is that you are not the body. You are the awareness operating the body, the observer behind the thoughts, the presence behind the identity. And an unconscious observer creates unconsciously. That is why forgetting was necessary. Because a being who does not know who they are is easier to control, easier to program, easier to extract from. They taught you what to think, but never how thinking creates. They taught you how to work, but never how reality responds. They taught you what the world is, but never that you are the source. Your mission is not to destroy the system. It is to wake up inside it, to remember that you are not the character. You are the consciousness experiencing itself through form. And when consciousness remembers itself, the game changes. The code responds. The simulation reorganizes. So the question is not if this knowledge is real. The question is, are you ready to remember who you are?
Okay, so this video pops up and I thought, the truth about oil. And it goes on to have this interview with a guy who claimed something shocking. I'm just wondering, have we been deceived about fossil fuels? Of course, officially, they're from, phytoplankton. At first it was dinosaurs. Now it's like, no, it's just like big pockets of plankton that like fossilized during the dinosaur age or whatever. But I can tell you, there are other theories. Another theory, which is, again, definitely not confirmed and probably false, is that it's self-replenishing, never runs out, is a abiotic mineral, and is constantly regenerating in the Earth's crust, and can never run out. Now, should we be burning it? I mean, the whole system's set up to burn on it right now, I think, to get us in this pinch where they can get us dependent on it and then pull the plug like they're trying to do right now. Though there are other energy sources we should be thinking about, which they have black shelved and hidden away because they don't want it to be released to the public for obvious reasons. Now, I can't...
We've been deceived about everything.
The Greeks believed the gods lived atop Mount Olympus. In India, the cosmic mountain Mount Kailash was believed to be the throne of Shiva. And in the traditions of the ancient Near East, the mountains east of Mesopotamia were no different. This was the realm of the gods. The Zagros Mountains formed the natural border between two ancient civilizations. To the west, Sumer, Akkad, and Babylon. To the east, Elam and the Iranian Plateau. Ancient armies crossed these mountains. Traders carried metals, stone, and rare goods through their passes. In Mesopotamian stories, the eastern mountains were sometimes described as the land of the rising sun, a mysterious region beyond the known cities of civilization. One of the most famous myths connected to this idea appears in the Epic of Gilgamesh. In the story, the hero Gilgamesh travels east to reach a mysterious mountain known as Mashu. Mashu guarded the entrance to the path of the sun, the place where the sun god traveled as it rose and set each day. At the gates of this mountain stood terrifying beings known as the Scorpion Men, creatures whose upper bodies were human and whose lower bodies were scorpions. Their task was simple. They guarded the gate of the sun. When Gilgamesh approached, the Scorpion Men warned him that the path ahead was not meant for humans, because beyond the gate was a realm where gods traveled. In some Sumerian traditions, the gods originally dwelled in a sacred mountain land called Kur. The word itself had multiple meanings. It could refer to mountains, the underworld, or distant lands beyond Sumer. Some scholars believe that the Sumerians used the word Kur specifically to describe the mountainous regions to their east, the same region that today lies inside Iran. This is also where the ancient Elamite civilization flourished, worshipping their own pantheon of powerful gods centered around cities like Susa and sacred structures like Shogazanbil. When ancient civilizations built ziggurats, temples, and sacred cities, they often placed them in locations that already held religious significance, places tied to celestial events, sacred mountains, or ancient myth. The Elamites built their great temple complexes in the shadow of the Zagros Mountains, precisely where Mesopotamian myth placed the land of the gods. The mountains of western Iran may have marked one of the most important access points on Earth, a passage between the human world and whatever realm the ancient texts describe as the domain of the gods.